Well, as the immediate recovery efforts from the devastating Maui wildfires continue, the University of Hawaii Economic Research Organization, or UHERO, is looking at the long road ahead.
And UHERO Executive Director Carl Bonham joins us now. Thank you so much for spending your Monday evening here with us on this Labor Day. We really appreciate it.
No, it's my pleasure.
Yeah. You know, UHERO released a report last week taking a look at the impacts from the Maui fires. And hotels were actually, they were hurting a little for July from the report released by DBET. Can you explain how this is going to impact people who aren't even in the visitor industry?
So, the direct impacts really are people who lost their jobs in the fires, people who lost their homes in the fires and their cars and loved ones. And then the sort of knock-on effects are people who are losing their jobs or losing their business sales because of lost visitors on Maui. And then one step beyond that is people who are running restaurants or other businesses, and they don't have locals to sell to anymore because those locals have lost income. But the primary is really about Maui and tourism industry, and the rest of the effects across the state are pretty limited right now.
And you know that there's taxes, right? The TAT
Sure.
for the county and the state as well. So those losses will be felt
Yes.
by everyone, right?
Yeah. So the losses, as our estimates of how much tax revenue might be lost, say in this fiscal year, they're small enough. I mean, we're still talking big numbers, several $100 million, but they're small enough that the state can weather this, right? So, of course, we have a Council on Revenues meeting coming up this week. We'll see what the council says, but those impacts are real, but they're not enough to, say, result in widespread layoffs of state and county workers, for example.
And we know, it's impossible to say, what it'll take to rebuild. But at this point, what exactly does a path to recovery look like?
It's very, very challenging, right? So obviously the very near term is still the hazardous waste removal and debris, right? Getting the burned cars out and shipping these things, off island. And once you've begun to get that cleanup done, and that could take 6 months, a year, then you can start thinking about rebuilding. But in the meantime, there's this community engagement, this community conversation that has to occur. And so, and then there's multiple steps in the recovery of tourism. The first step is to get visitors back to the rest of Maui. And I actually think that we're on our way towards that. We've seen discounts from airlines, and that there are discounts on rental cars and on hotels. And so I think we're probably in that process. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me if Labor Day was better than many people expected. Then eventually you get West Maui open, right? And then you have this gradual process of recovery of tourism that's impacted by everything from visitors' potential fears over future fires, community concern with having visitors back, and then ultimately having people who've lost their homes and having short-term emergency workers and eventually construction workers. They have to have a place to live, and right now they're living in hotel rooms, right, and short-term vacation rentals. If you're filling those up, you can't get the visitors back. And so it's a multi-year process that is big losses up front, followed by economic gains from the rebuilding process that will spread across the whole state.
Carl, could this possibly be a pivot point? We've been talking about diversifying for so
Good
long,
question.
for years, right?
Yeah.
Or is that unrealistic at this point in time?
Well, so the diversification process is something that is a long, drawn-out process. There is an opportunity here that is very, very important, and that is for people who are interested in getting into the construction trades to go to Maui College or go to Honolulu Community College and start an apprenticeship program, because there's going to be an enormous need for construction workers. We simply don't have that many construction workers in this state, and we don't want to be having them fly in here and take up housing while we're trying to rebuild Maui. So that is one avenue for some diversification.
Are there any challenges that you see to the recovery of Maui?
The list of challenges is extremely long, right? It's multifaceted. Thinking about rebuilding Lahaina and avoiding, dealing with high cost of housing. We're talking about a place that normally takes an extremely long time to get a permit to build. That has to be changed for the actual rebuilding process, right? You can't take a year or a year and a half to get a permit when it comes, and I think it will change, right? So if you own a piece of property, your house burned down, once it's cleaned, and we've gone through some of the healing process and the community meetings and so on, we should see the permissions to rebuild happen quite quickly. But that's one of the typical hurdles that we're going to face.
And Carl, final question. What should lawmakers and the governor, what should they focus on moving forward based on your research?
So there's one thing that I think is quite clear is transparency. Tracking where the money is going. There's a lot of federal money that's coming in, making sure people are aware of what the state and county actions are and the federal actions are, so that we can sort of deal with some of the mistrust of government. In the report that we released, we suggested that the state probably should be looking at a sort of a central organization with state and county, state and Maui people leading that organization to organize the whole thing, so that you don't have different agencies competing with each other, and basically just to make sure that it's done more efficiently.